So I thought to myself, is it possible using the Ableton Live instruments and effects to get anywhere near those sort of classic resonant, highly resonant and full sounds of the Korg MS-20? Is there any possibility to get those kind of tones from the software? Well, the answer is yes, of course there are compromises, but you can get some beautiful tones and some really sort of aggressive, highly resonant tones. Let's have a quick listen, and then I'll show you how the rack works, and as always, if you're interested, how to put this together yourselves. I've named this rack Analog MS Mini. There's a fair bit missing from an MS-20, of course. We don't have all the controls. As it's based around analog here, we also don't have a triangle waveform, sync, and some other things that the MS-20 had. Some of the modulation is missing here. We can't modulate the pitch because of the number of macros available. So I've just called it MS Mini, and the goal was, as I say, to achieve those kind of high resonant tones and try and get close to the MS-20 sound, if as close as I could. I have the Arturia version of the MS-20, and in the process of making this rack, I've done a lot of matching with the oscillators to get them as close as I could. You don't quite have the depth, the weight of the tones. That's not available, but it's still a fun instrument, and it's a nice little idea to have a go at building yourselves. Anyway, so let's have a listen. We'll shut off VCO2 to begin with. So just VCO1 open at the moment. We have a saw, a pulse width. We have noise. That's on oscillator 1. Close that down. We have oscillator 2. Also has a saw and a square. So those are the waveforms we have available. We can, of course, combine these. Let's go to maybe a saw and open up that one. Turn this down a bit, it's quite loud. So here we have a saw combined with the square, and then we have the filter, low pass and a high pass. We have attack, decay, sustain and release, the ability to change the pitch of the oscillator. I believe this is linked to oscillator 2. So we can pitch up 5, 3, whatever. We have the possibility to modulate. Let's close this for a second. We have the possibility to modulate the put the depth on. This is the rate and the depth, so we can modulate the low pass frequency here. I've also left the option here, this is why I have it open like this. The lack of macros didn't help, but we can here go into the LFO and add modulation to the high pass. So both the modulation for the low pass and the high pass would now be controlled using the M rate and the M depth dials here. So we can have both of these modulating at once, and we can control the amount for the high pass here. So we can get both of the filters moving, sweeping. Let's turn this off for a second. Then we'll turn off this LFO. We have the resonance. Let's try 25%. Actually, we'll go to a saw here. %. Starts to buzz a little bit. $75. And finally it goes up to 99, which in my comparison works out to be approximately 75% of the resonance of the MS-20. So excuse the steps, I'm doing this with a mouse. So that, as I say, the MS-20 would then go another 25% on top of that, but we still get quite a usable resonance range. We can bring in the high pass. Watch the levels a little bit here. So lots of nice tones to be had, which was really the purpose of this rack. ADSR here, and that's about it really. It's possible to save any presets you make. You can either, well, I would save them here as a new snapshot, because I'm actually using, if I open up the rack, let's turn this off for a second. If I open up the rack here, I have analog here. You could save a preset, but then it wouldn't save the filter settings here, so it's best to save here. I've made a list of presets and we can have a listen later on, but let's have a look what's in the rack quickly. So we have an analog where I've made some very sort of fine tunings regarding pulse width and frequencies and things like that. As I say, I spent quite too much time trying to match oscillators to see if I could get close. In many ways it was a bit fruitless, but it was worth the effort. I got somewhere closer to the goal I had in terms of the tone from the oscillators. And so we have analog here with some tweaks, and then we have the LFO, which is controlling modulation, and then finally we have the new auto filter in Ableton 12.2. So this rack only works in Ableton 12.2 and above, I guess. Now the interesting thing here is I chose here for my drive the PRD circuit and not the MS-20, because you get a better tone here, or at least a closer tone. I'll maybe give you an example. Let's have a listen with one of those. If we put this back on for a second. This is with the PRD circuit and the resonance. If I switch now to the, oh, this is the high, let's do the low. Close that one. If I switch now to the MS-20 circuit, you just don't quite get the the same kind of resonance. So the burn from this routine here, here we go, let's switch it back. You get a much more resonant filter there, which I thought was quite interesting and seemed to match better the MS-20, at least when I was doing my comparison. So that was my reasoning for going with this model here. Okay, so turn that off again. Yeah, so we have the two filters, one to control the high pass here and one to control the low pass, both on this PRD circuit. The LFO is here for our modulation, and analog tweaked a little bit to try and get the best out of the oscillators. That's really it. Okay, so let's have a look at how it's put together then. It's quite simple, a little bit of tweaking. We have some specific mappings which I've made here, and I'll leave this as a screenshot as always at the end if you want to jump to the end and just get these values and put them in yourself. That's fine if you don't want to see me going through it. Yeah, let's have a look at the build then. First thing you're going to need then is the instrument rack, which you can find here, instrument rack. Drop that in. As always, you're then presented with these 6 macros here. Yours will just say macro 1, 2, 3. You can open them up here using the plus button, and snapshots are accessible with a little camera here. We'll come to that in a second. Okay, I've kept my names to help speed up the video. The instrument we're going to need is analog. We'll drop that in there, and we'll drop in the audio effects here, the LFO. And 2 of the new updated auto filters. So as I say, this is only going to work with Ableton Live 12.2 and above. Drop that in here. Okay, so I think we'll set up the filters very quickly. We'll put them on one we want to have as high pass, 12 decibel. And we will set the drive to 10%. And change our model to the PRD. Let's repeat that for this one here. So 12. 10%, this one we keep as a low pass. And the PRD model. Okay, just check those. I think that's everything there. The LFO we can now map as well. So we have 2 mappings we want here. I set this to triangle. Of course you can change this at any time. The MS-20 had various waveforms, but I kept this on triangle. We'll map here the high pass first. Set that to 0. And we'll open that here and we'll map the low pass here, frequency of that one. They're now mapped. Let's close this up a second. Now we need to map here these controls. So we're going to our mapping and we'll map the rate. I've got it here to this one here. And the depth will map here. Okay, so that now gives us, oh, why did the rate not go? Let's just look at that again. Oh, put them on, my mistake, put them on both. So we want the depth on this one, obviously. Let's get rid of that, mapped it to the wrong one. So the rate goes onto this one here. There we go. Okay, so now we can control our LFO, and with it the modulation of the, at least in this case, the low pass here. That will now modulate that. If we want to use the high pass here, as I say, then we have to introduce a value here manually. Okay, so that's all set up. We can close that up now. Now we just need to look at analog. Turn that off. Let's make our settings for analog. So we'll go here and we will map the shape to oscillator 1 wave here, and the shape of this to here. We'll do all our constraints and settings here in a second. Then we have on oscillator 1, sorry, which has the pulse width. We click back on oscillator 1. We want here this pulse width to be mapped here. That's done as well. And go back to oscillator 2. The semitones here, we want to map those here. Now we can map the levels. VCO 2 we can stay on and map that here. And also the level here for VCO 1 again. Map that. While we're here, we might as well do the ADSR as well. We can do that in the amp section here. So we need the attack, the decay, sustain, and release. That's mapped. Is there anything else we need here? No, we can come out of the mapping here. Okay, that's okay. What we're going to have to do though is map here our low pass frequency, resonance, and high pass to the filters. So we'll close this again quickly. We'll do, this is the high pass, let's rename this. So we don't get confused. Okay, so let's map the high pass then. We can map that, the high pass frequency here, we can map here, and the resonance we can map there, high pass resonance, and we repeat that for the low pass frequency and resonance. So they're all mapped as well. We have all of that mapped. Okay, so now we've just got a few more settings to make in analog. Some of the fine tweaks I made, some simple stuff, and then we'll do the mapping, and then it's pretty much finished. So we have here we've done everything associated with that. The filter, I had the filter set to 18,900 and a 12 dB filter here, and I was using this filter in advance of the two at the end, just really to get the tone right for the oscillator. So I kind of tweaked it in analog, so what comes out of analog is as close as I could get it, at least, to what I wanted. And then the two filters at the end really are the bringers of resonance. Okay, so what else do we have here? We have to set up the envelope setting here. I had here the key value for, so click over filter 1, this key value I had set to 22, which just shifts the filter here up the keyboard a little bit so that the lower tones are a bit more damped. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything. It was just those tweaks there. Double check. The envelope value here I set to 0 actually. That was on 0. These will map as well. Okay, so that's it. I think we can go and set up the parameters here. So for the VCO levels, this I set to 0. And this one I set to 0 as well. For the sustain, kept it at 1. For the release, 30 milliseconds. And this one is best to dial in by hand. If you need to, for fine tuning, you can use the shift. And that was 15 seconds. For the pitch, I set this to -5, +5. The oscillator 1 pulse width, I reversed this and I set it to a maximum of 99. Again, one of those little tweaks. For the oscillator 2 shape, we don't have a sign on the MS-20, so we just draw this. We have the saw and the through to noise. And this one here, we want the saw, for oscillator 1, we want saw through to, excuse me, that should be saw through to rectangle, and this one should be saw through to noise. That's correct here. So oscillator 2, saw through to rectangle, and oscillator 1, saw through to noise. Then we have the low pass resonance, which I limited to 99 because if you have it at 100 with this PDR model, then you'll often get a very high pitched tone just playing on. So that just removes that behavior. Then the low pass M rate, this is 17,800 to match the value I found for the MS-20. And the low pass depth is 100, that's okay. The low pass frequency goes from 20 to 20 kilohertz, correct. High pass resonance here, also 99. Frequency is the same. And then we have here the decay and attack times. Now these ones have a setting of 32 milliseconds. Again, this is going to need the shift, 32 milliseconds here. And here the attack time was 14. And this also had a setting of 24. Okay, so that should be everything, hopefully. Let's try it, see what kind of tone we get. Okay, so let's try one of the snapshots. Go to the bass. Seems to be working. Oscillator 2. Yes. Noise. Does the pulse width work? Okay, so everything seems fine. Let's see if our oscillator is working. And let's try the high pass as well. Seems to work. Okay, so let's try a preset, see if anything works. Maybe go here. As always, I hope this has been useful, of use to someone. If you want to build this, have a go. It's a fun little rack. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care as always, and see you in the next one. Thank you.